If the US and NATO want war, we will give it to them. That's not a movie quote. That's a direct warning from Vladimir Putin, and right now, those words are echoing across every major capital in the world. It's one of the boldest and most dangerous statements Russia has made since the start of the Ukraine conflict, a message aimed not just at Washington or Brussels, but at anyone who dares to underestimate Moscow's resolve. So what exactly triggered this warning? And what could it mean for the future of the Russia-Ukraine war, and possibly the world? Let's break it down. First, context. Over the past few weeks, tensions have been climbing fast. Western intelligence agencies have reported that NATO countries, particularly the US and the UK, are stepping up support for Ukraine, not just with weapons, but with deeper intelligence sharing, drone technology, and long-range strike capabilities. Ukraine's recent attacks on Russian territory, including oil refineries and border regions, have hit harder than ever before. Moscow sees this as direct Western involvement, not just proxy warfare, but an actual attempt to weaken Russia from the inside. That's when Putin stepped up to the microphone and delivered a chilling message. If the West wants confrontation, we are ready. It's classic Putin, calm, calculated, and deeply strategic. He doesn't raise his voice, but his words carry the weight of decades of military history. This isn't just about Ukraine anymore. This is about Russia versus the entire Western military bloc. But what makes this warning different from past rhetoric? This time, Russia's military posture actually backs it up. Satellite imagery and multiple defense reports show increased troop movements near the western borders, strategic bombers being repositioned, and new nuclear-capable systems put on alert. The Kremlin has even carried out nuclear readiness drills, signaling to NATO that it's not bluffing. To understand why this moment is so dangerous, you need to see how the conflict evolved. When the war began, Russia expected a quick victory. But the longer it dragged on, the more Ukraine adapted, aided by Western funding and advanced weaponry. Each new shipment of long-range missiles or air defense systems from NATO pushed Russia to escalate. And now, we're seeing the consequences of that chain reaction. For many experts, Putin's latest words are not empty threats. They're strategic pressure. A psychological move meant to remind NATO that every step forward by Ukraine could bring the world a step closer to a larger confrontation. He's betting that the West doesn't have the appetite for a direct war, and so he's trying to make the cost of intervention too high to consider. But here's where things get complicated. The US and NATO have their own red lines. When Russian missiles landed near the Polish border last year, it sent a chill through the alliance. The message was clear: one wrong move, one misfire. And Article 5, NATO's collective defense clause, could turn a regional war into a global one. So, when Putin says, if the US and NATO want war, we'll give it to them, he's walking a razor-thin line between deterrence and escalation. He's trying to project power without crossing the threshold that would trigger an all-out response. Meanwhile, inside Ukraine, the human cost keeps rising. Entire cities are experiencing blackouts from missile strikes on power infrastructure. Millions live in constant uncertainty, wondering if the next siren means they'll lose their homes or worse. Yet, despite the destruction, Ukrainian morale remains remarkably strong. President Zelensky has vowed that no amount of threats from Moscow will break their resistance. Still, behind the scenes, diplomats are scrambling. Reports suggest that secret back-channel talks between Russian and Western envoys have taken place in neutral locations. The discussions focus on prisoner exchanges, humanitarian corridors, and, in whispers, the possibility of ceasefire frameworks. But none of it seems close to reality. Neither side wants to be the first to blink. So what happens next? If the U.S. continues supplying long-range strike systems that reach deep into Russian territory, Putin could escalate by targeting NATO-linked supply hubs, perhaps even outside Ukraine's borders. That's the nightmare scenario Western analysts are worried about, a spark that could ignite something much bigger. But Putin also knows Russia's limits. The economy is under massive pressure. Sanctions have hurt more than Moscow admits publicly, and the longer the war drags on, the harder it becomes to justify the cost to Russian citizens. That's why many experts believe these warnings, though alarming, are also part of a broader strategy, not to start a global war, but to scare the West into slowing down military aid. Still, in politics and war, perception often becomes reality. The more aggressive the rhetoric, the more each side feels compelled to show strength. It's a dangerous cycle, one that's been repeating since the Cold War, and the world has learned before, when nuclear powers start exchanging threats, it doesn't take much for words to turn into action. Right now, both sides are locked in a psychological chess game. The U.S. is testing how far it can push without direct confrontation. Russia is testing how much it can threaten without losing credibility. And somewhere in between, millions of innocent civilians are caught in the middle. Think about this. Every time a refinery burns in Russia or a missile hits an apartment block in Ukraine, both sides double down. Each strike fuels more retaliation. Each retaliation fuels more hate. And with every passing day, peace feels further away. So is Putin bluffing? Or is this truly the moment where the conflict shifts from a proxy war to something far more dangerous? That's the question haunting every global leader right now. What's clear is that this isn't just a fight for territory anymore. It's a fight for dominance, for identity, and for survival in a rapidly changing world order. And when two superpowers both feel cornered, history tells us the outcome can be catastrophic. But here's the thing. Despite all the chaos, there's still room for diplomacy. It's shrinking, yes, but it's not gone. Every major conflict in history has eventually ended not through victory, but through negotiation. The question is whether either side can find that path before the cost becomes unbearable. Because at the end of the day, behind the politics, the tanks, and the threats, it's ordinary people, families, soldiers, children, who pay the price for every headline, every strike, every word spoken by men in power. So when Putin warns, if the U.S. and NATO want war, we'll give it to them, remember. It's not just a political statement. It's a reminder of how fragile peace really is. One wrong decision, one misstep, and the world could be facing something it hasn't seen in generations. What do you think? Is this just another round of political theater, or are we inching closer to a larger confrontation? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. And if you found this breakdown informative, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future updates on the Russia-Ukraine conflict and global defense developments.